So thank you everyone for joining. A very good morning, good afternoon to everybody, and can I extend a very warm welcome to today's second in the series of our IACC shorts, Operations, Defining Reality and Dealing with Today's Demands. Due to the large number, we are asking you all to stay on mute. Also taking your video cameras off, please, unless you're on the panel. That would be great. And for any questions, please use your chat boxes, which you'll find at the bottom of your screens. But also today we will be running Slido to help with the Q&A. To access, you should have all received details, but it's visiting slido.com. And today's event code is #IACCops. Thank you. The session is going to be recorded and forwarded to you all later today. And with that, let me hand over to our facilitator today, Mark Cooper, CEO of IACC. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kate, and good day to everybody. We have an action-packed 40 minutes today, defining reality, looking into the future as it pertains to operations in our industry. We've got some exciting panelists, which I look forward to introducing in just a moment. But first of all, I guess we all recognise that we have now moved past this immediacy of having the pain of closing down our venues, supporting our people and managing the fallout of those events during March and April and some into May as well at this stage. We are now in that phase where we need to learn from each other. Sharing those ideas has become more important now than ever before, and asking ourselves what the future is going to look like when we do open those doors again, which we surely will be opening those doors again. We've chosen to centre today's discussion around operational considerations. Last week, for those of you who joined us, we focused very much on the sales and marketing process. And when we dissect the next 40 minutes, I'm going to be asking our panelists to talk to us about both what they're doing today within their businesses and operations, and then we're going to be taking a deeper dive into what they foresee as going to be the different operations.
I wasn't being is that your
Just before we get on to introducing our panel though, and also Slido, I will ask that anyone who's on the call today that is not one of our panelists, could you please mute your microphones now, which will help those panelists come over loud and clear for everyone. And also for those who've got wonderful video, although we'd love to see your smiling faces, we just need to protect a little bit of the bandwidth for today's session, given the numbers that are attending. So without any further ado, we want this to be an interactive discussion, and to do that we're using our old friend Slido. For any of you who have been to IACC conferences either in the US or in Europe in the past, you'll be very familiar with Slido. It just gives us that opportunity to ask questions in a little bit more of a structured format than on Zoom's platform with the chat box. We won't use the chat box, we'll use Slido. So if you can go into slido.com and put in the event code IACCops, doesn't matter if it's upper or lowercase, you can enter your questions, and when we've gone through each of the stages, Kate will help us by elevating those. Even if you haven't got a burning question to really test our panel this morning, which I encourage you to do so, but if you haven't, there will be other questions on, and using Slido, you'll be able to vote up each of those questions that others have put in terms of priority, and we will get to the top first and we'll work our way down. But as I've said with the IACC short sessions last week, we may not get to all of your questions, but do not worry, we will be addressing every single one of your questions, either in the written format with the follow-up and the video, or if we've got a number of burning questions, we're just going to put another one of these on in the coming days and address and tackle them. So no question is going to go unanswered. So first of all, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce you to our wonderful panelists today. First of all, to begin with, I would like to welcome Ben Abitan from the Chateau Form Group in Europe, a operator of, Ben, is it over 50 conference centers now?
Oh, my general manager is going to be on.
71 locations in Europe.
71.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Ben is head of experiences and operations for Chateau Fawn. I would also like to welcome our global president, Sean Anderson. Sean is vice president for Sodexo. Sodexo operate many of the conference centers that you know within the IACC family, but also it's worth noting as well, Sodexo also operate many of those larger venues, particularly the ones we're seeing in the news now, which are being converted into critical care units and housing for our emergency response teams. And I know Sean is as connected to the IACC properties as he is to the bigger picture with Sodexo as well. So Sean, welcome. We're looking forward to getting some of your views and insights.
Yeah, thanks, Mark, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody.
And then I would like to welcome Sarah Blyvis, General Manager of the wonderful Chauncey Hotel and Conference Centre in New Jersey. And Sarah is Board Director on the IACC Americas chapter. And I should have mentioned as well that Ben is newly joined as Board Director on the European chapter as well. So Ben, apologies for missing that one out with you. But Sarah, welcome. Sarah runs and is part of the Aramark Conference Centre group. Sarah runs a conference centre which looks after predominantly one very large client as well as external clients, ETS training, and comes with some great insights. So Sarah, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Okay, so I am just going to stop my video only because I'm going to go now to the questions, and you will not want to see the top of my head for the next 40 minutes. Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with operations today, if I may. And Sean, I'm going to come to you first with the first questions. Now, as I mentioned in the introduction, we're hearing of lots and lots of those larger venues taking on the change of use in dealing with and supporting and tackling COVID-19 directly, becoming field hospitals, accommodating medical teams, etc. Are you seeing any creative uses of smaller venues that you're operating to support in maybe indirect ways? And if you are, maybe for this group, it'd be interesting to hear, do you wait for the authorities to come and knock on your door with an idea, or can you be preemptive and proactive in that regard?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark. And you're right, we are seeing, I mean, across our portfolio and everywhere, we're seeing an awful lot of creativity in this space, a lot of creative problem solving. And I think it's probably coming from a few different standpoints. So one is certainly an opportunity to help kind of stabilize the individual business, that conference center or that venue. But also there's a drive behind that to try to help create opportunities for people, both to help people, because we are all seeing a pretty highly contagious, if you will, kind of commitment to social responsibility, and that is creating some opportunities. But also as operators here that we have kind of on this session today, everybody's looking to create opportunities if they can for their own team to help keep them engaged and help them work through this time period. So yeah, it isn't just the large venues, as you said. We're seeing smaller venues get involved in issues like helping with school feeding. There's a lot of school districts, I don't know, virtually coast to coast. That last I saw, 38 to 40 out of the 50 states have shut down all the school systems, and kids are now at home, and there are still kids and families in need. And we're seeing a lot of venues participate in that school feeding on a variety of levels. So the obvious piece of that might be right in your wheelhouse, where you help with food production, let's say, for that school district. And that's a conversation direct with the school and maybe with the city to see where the help is needed. It doesn't have to be your immediately adjacent, school district if that's where you sit, but helping on the production side, sure, that's probably pretty maybe the most obvious opportunity for everybody, but they need help with logistics and distribution. Maybe you're working with a food bank or a food pantry who's got most of the food prepared or assembled, but they don't have people to do that finishing work. If you've ever volunteered at a food bank, you know what I'm talking about. It's that last piece where they box and package everything up and prepare it for shipping. Maybe they have somebody to handle distribution, but you could get involved in that. They would just drop, we're seeing where they drop large quantities of food, mostly assembled, but they need it packaged. And we're seeing our venues dive into that, as well as helping with the distribution piece. If sometimes they need just points of distribution, whether it's for the school district or maybe even for the community at large. And you can set up outdoor stations, tented stations where people can drive up and participate in those food programs. And we're seeing that at a lot of venues. We're also seeing, you talked about the repurposing of space. So repurposing a venue, in a large scale venue, into a quasi hospital. I think everybody can envision that probably, and even some of the residential venues can see that. But the non-residential venues and smaller venues, if your space is set up and it's conducive, you still can be a big help to the medical community. There are patients who are on the upswing as far as their condition, and they're nearly ready to be discharged and they're safe to transport. We're seeing venues being set up as a lighter medical facility where those patients can sit and kind of get healthy the last couple of days, and they have medical facilities and medical staff on site to help. Even in support of the larger venues, what we're seeing a lot of people participate in is the larger venues, just like the people who are coordinating that entire approach. They don't exactly know what they're getting into because we're in uncharted territory, and what we're finding is the demand is much higher than what they had in pencil and paper when they started to roll it out. And so supporting those larger venues with your own pop-up service is something that we're seeing. So again, maybe obvious to this group might be services like pop-up food service, or pop-up if you are residential or you're a larger sized venue. Maybe you've got housekeeping, public space attendance, and it's a matter of getting in front of those other venues, again, having conversations with the city or local government to see where the help is needed. And you can deploy some essentially surge support from your team that becomes a pop-up environment. So we're seeing a lot of that activity going on. And your last question, or last piece of it, you asked about waiting for people to knock on the door. And I can only imagine, when we think about this group of operators that we have on the call, and a lot of movers and shakers and people who are on the hop all day long, I can imagine they smile a little bit when we ask them if they should sit and wait. And so, no, not only should you not sit and wait, but you have to get pretty aggressive. The help is needed, but we're at a point now where sometimes people don't even know what that help can look like. So as you reinvent yourself, no one's going to know if you don't tell anybody. And in lieu of waiting for the knock on the door, maybe you should go knock a few doors down and jump up and down on the desk and explain to people what you're able to do, and just ask when you can get started.
John, that's great. If I may, I'll open it up to Ben and Sarah. If you've got anything to add to that question, or indeed any examples of anything you've seen or done in that area of putting yourself forward for alternative use.
I can say for our area where we are in New Jersey, one of the things that we've talked about as a group in my team is how can we be a resource for our community? With a lot of organizations having to, who are truly struggling, how could they use us to have a location in the future to meet when we do reopen? So that is something that we're working on now, is how we can touch those people so that they have a place to go, because their operations, their offices they can't afford to have anymore. So we're looking at offering maybe some complimentary usage of our space to open it up to be more of a resource for them and continue to develop our relationships with them.
That's a very different but very important point as well, is just by opening your doors and offering them the opportunity without cost today, will probably likely build and develop a really important relationship for when you do get back to a position where they are training for the future, and then you'll be the first port of call. So we remember that I remember that after 9/11, with a number of properties just opening the doors for their clients to start their emergency planning for the recovery. And that's a really good point that you made there, Sarah. We kind of are perhaps getting into that phase now of being able to proactively go out there. Second question, Sarah, is for yourself. A number of operational staff are being supported financially now, wherever we are in the world. Thankfully, governments in the most have stepped up and at least taken that immediate shoulder of concern away from us. How are you using the time now when you're not operating a property with your ops team? And can you talk maybe about how you're choosing to communicate with them and keep in touch and keep them connected, but then also from a, is there a productivity element? Is there a learning element that you're applying with them during this downtime?
Thank you. First, I know that we're extremely lucky that we have our management team right now working remote, but working. So I feel very grateful for that at the moment. We have a daily stand-up every morning. It's our face-to-face, which is priceless because we don't have much face-to-face other than the people that we're living with. And so it's nice to see other people. And we touch base and we talk about our plan for the day. And it's twofold for us. One, we're taking advantage because we have the time that we don't normally have the time when we're in the operation to actually develop ourselves. So we're focusing on leadership training, interview skills, diversity and inclusion, things that we always kind of put to the side when we're in the hustle and bustle of our operation. Then the other side that we're talking about is our reopening strategy. Who are we and what are we going to do when we actually open those doors? And I think that's probably why most of us are on this call today, because we're all craving for that information. As a team, we're talking and we're brainstorming. What are we going to do? What is the new, uniform? What is it? What PPE are we now going to have to wear? How is our food style going to change? Our continuous breaks that we have that we're so proud of within IACC. So I use this time with our operators, and a lot of it is truly brainstorming. And when we have these collective minds, you really can come up with some amazing ideas that you just can't think about for yourself on your own. So we break out, throughout the day, there are smaller groups that meet and have conversations so that when we come back together as a team, we can discuss, what did you guys come up with in that time that you spent together. We've also, I should mention, the IACC webinars, we're all participating in those. And there's a lot of free training out there, which I wanted to mention to everyone, that the American Hotel and Lodging Educational Institute, which has trainings, which usually they're quite expensive. They're offering 3 free trainings right now. One is on leadership, one is on supervisory skills, and one is on certified hotel administrator. Anyone who has any hospitality background can take these free courses, and it's just a great opportunity to develop yourself during this time when we're all mostly remote.
Great. Well, thank you for those, Sarah. They're good tips. Benjamin, I think you were just about to speak.
Absolutely. I'd just like to add a little point on the methodology here for keeping in touch and distance management. We're about 2,000 people, 95% of which are working from home. All our venues are, of course, closed. And since most of our venues are in rural areas, you were before asking whether we should go and knock on doors. We've knocked on doors, and I'm not done breaking them down because so far the government has not given us the opportunity to open and to help. So we've oriented all of our teams toward individual helping. But one of the ways we keep in touch and we foster the relationship between everybody in the company is by having identified 3 very different times on which people go online to chat and engage with each other. The first category is meetings. It's what most people use all these systems for, but we've made this an official meeting time. It's top-down information, and then this meeting ends. But we've also added fun meetings or conversation meetings. There's not real any point fixed for that conversation. It's just to enable people to have an actual conversation. A lot of my salespeople are quite young and live on their own, and so they look very much forward to having that time just chatting with someone. Yeah. And the third part that we said, you've mentioned on learning, there's a website called openclassroom.ai, which is a great resource for all sorts of classes. We've made a corporate deal with them, and they've made some leadership classes and other management classes available to some of our managing teams. And so I think it's definitely, I'm not sure if they've opened that up or not, but it's definitely something providing or trying to find ways of making learning available online is a great way to keep your people engaged.
Great, Ben, thank you for sharing those and those examples. If I can, I'm going to take the opportunity. Always there's a little curveball in there. I have one mystery panelist who's going to reveal herself in just one moment, but I'd like to just ask Tracy Stuckrath from Thrive Meetings, who I know is on the phone today and has been working over the last couple of weeks and delivering podcasts, incredibly busy in the area of building for the future. Tracy, welcome. What training should we be thinking of in terms of preparing ourselves for what food and beverage is going to look like in the future?
Good morning, Mark. It's so good to be here. One of the things that I think is food safety. I mean, we all have our standards under ServSafe and a variety of other things, but how are we thinking about how are we going to serve our guests going forward? Buffet stations. I don't think we're all going to go put sneeze guards on our buffet stations that are out in rooms like that, right? But do we add hand washing stations to the room? Do we add more sanitizing stations? Somebody suggested the other day you put a door, open the bathroom door with the door stop, that's right next to those rooms, and push people to go wash their hands before they go through it. But do we also look at the seating arrangements that we have? But as a meeting planner as well, I mean, meeting planners don't literally, and I say that very openly, that we don't focus on food safety. We rely on the Aramarks and the Sodexos and our hoteliers to do that food safety. So I think one of the things that we need to do too is how do we communicate what we're doing food safety wise to educate the attendees as well as the planners, and help our planners understand what we're doing with food safety to ensure that their attendees are safe, because they're going to get tons of questions about it, and even preset salads and desserts that we are typically do we want to get rid of those? Do we have to box everything up? Do box lunches? So I think those are just things operational wise that we have to think forward on. I don't think we have to go 100% box, and we're not going to go 100% sneeze guards, but how can we address those questions and those concerns for potential attendees that are coming?
That's a really important point. Be ready for the questions to come, and be in a position to address them in a way that means and demonstrates that you have gone through that thought process and due diligence at a property level. That's a really good point. Tracy, thank you. Really appreciate you joining with that question. If I can, Benjamin, have you looked outside of the immediate hospitality, hotel and meetings industry at any other industries for inspiration? And I ask you this question because a little while ago you were telling me about some interesting sort of research that Boston Consulting Group were doing and Harvard Business Review, etc. What have you seen, or what have you taken from outside of our industry and thought about its relevance for the now, for Chateau Forme?
Yeah, first I wanted to share with you a study that just came out from BCG. I'd love to share with everybody on the board. I don't know if I can upload the document somehow, but it's their epidemic projections and the reopening dates that they suggest from their studies. So it's, of course, an estimation like everybody else's, but no, on their list, no country opens before the second week of June from lockdown, and their longer potential lockdowns go all the way to September in some cases, which is for something that we've just used to update our hypothesis of, you know, when reopen and how that should happen. That's the first thing. We've been looking at other studies also to see how we could, you know, try to shift our business model to other, or to at least expand in the meantime to make sure that we have some decent cash flows to float out of this crisis. And we've been exploring things like opening up more to B2C and other particular activities for events such as weddings and stuff that would reopen probably faster than our usual B2B model. Mark, if you could give me just, if you could clarify some of the things I mentioned to you, because we had a long conversation and I love talking to you. Is there something more precise you wanted me to touch upon?
No, not at all. Just the fact and example that you're looking outside of our industry news. And I have put onto the Slido poll in the speaker area just a note, Boston Consulting Group research on epidemics, and we will find that link and we will share it afterwards with all of the group. But it is good for us, I think, to look at other industries and see where creativity is coming from those. And that's interesting, the timeline that you have applied there.
Also in terms of the way meetings will happen, right? The general population will have discovered by now the joys of video conferencing, and how lots of meetings that were rather top-down, straightforward information will more likely move on to those digital medias, and where as an industry together we'll have to focus even more on experience and what kind of new kinds of meetings people will come and have with us that they cannot do online.
So we thought experiences were important before. They're critical as we move forward and people get out of their boxes, and it'll be social. That's good advice. Well, we're going to step into the future in a moment, but just before we do and move into the second phase, appreciate those insights from everyone. Kate, have we got any questions in regards to the dealing with the now that we can share?
Yes, we have a couple of questions come through. The first one is, in terms of your venues, are they charging to be used for emergency use facilities?
Okay, group, when you are opening your doors to immediate needs, community or governmental, what approach are you taking from a charging perspective, or is that $1 million question? Any thoughts?
Sure, Mark. I'll offer an idea. This just doesn't sound specific enough, but to be honest, it's on a case-by-case basis. I think everybody's dealing with the same situation with, if you will, at this point, call what was the legacy classic look and feel of the business. That's very difficult to get in front of people and to charge for at this point. Organizations outside of the people on this call are working through the same struggles that we are. And so it's tough to look at that business in the traditional style and to charge for that. But some of these other services, it's absolutely on a case-to-case basis. Maybe more government-leaning type businesses have got some money that they can help with, whereas some of the individuals, they don't. But I don't know that now, you have to take a look at that, as Benjamin was talking about in his business plan, in your cash flow analysis. If you can do without charging, and if that's the discussion you find yourself in, you're really setting yourself up, quite frankly, for a stronger future, maybe more than you are right now today.
Yeah. No, thank you. And the two examples that I'll give as well that I've seen, one from now and one from 9/11. In Sweden, just knowing that the facilities are there, knowing that the staff are being paid, but needing to be motivated, using the food and making food for the community groups and sending them out. That would never be able to happen if there was some discussion that needed to take place with regards to charging. So that's part of their social responsibility commitment to do that, or they've just taken their social responsibility commitment from there to right up there, and it's the right thing to do because, you know, that's what they're like as human beings. So there's that point. The other one is, you know, the one I referenced to 9/11, within reason, opening your property up for smaller emergency planning meetings for your customers will go a huge way to you being the first venue that they remember they got back together again after this crisis. So whether that's a group of 5 or a group of 10, the other unique feature maybe for IAC as well is the style of our properties. They're not properties that were open to the general public. So in a way they are cocooned. They are in this position where from a risk perspective, we can potentially offer, you know, from a sanitary protection perspective, a safer environment for those smaller meetings when they come back together. So no, thank you for that. Tracy.
I saw an article, my virtual hand, yeah. This morning I saw an article that people are surprised by how our industry, you know, tenting companies and some of the hotels are responding to this and pivoting to help, you know, the workers, the hospital people by providing them housing and things like that. That's what, and they were surprised. The guy said, this is what we do for a living. But I think that's one of the things that people don't know. We are able, our industry is really able to pivot on the fly. We pull rabbits, we pull really big rabbits out of tiny hats on a daily basis. And this is the time for us to shine and say, this is what we can do for you. And I think it's a great opportunity to put your thinking caps on to figure out how can you use your venues or your other things that you have to help your local community or the industry overall.
That's great. That's a really good point. The other question, I'm going to actually leave that until the second part, which is talking about you know, the staff layoffs and what IAC can do in regards to job boards and you know, and being able to make that connection with needs and analysis, because I think it does dovetail into what are our teams going to look like in the future? What services, what products are we going to be providing? What skills are we going to need? And Sean, this is a big question for you, but I know you're ready for it. You know, what is our industry going to look like in the future when we get out of the immediacy and the doors reopen as a longer term business model in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years time? Is it going to get back to normal, or are we going to look very, very different?
Yeah, I appreciate you thinking of me on that question, Mark. So, you know, I think so to start and to maybe, I don't know if it settles people down a little bit, but I heard someone, and I'm gonna steal, that was in a different context, but I love the line. And they said, when we get out of this, here's what you can count on. Everything really is going to be the same. It's just going to be different. And so what they mean behind that, right, is, are we still going to sell meetings? Sure. And do trainings and events and compete for talent? And sure, yeah, absolutely, we will. And where's the evidence, you say? Just look at the last downturn. It seems like it was forever ago, but it wasn't much more than 10 plus years ago. And what was the prognosis for our business, right? We were done. The industry was doomed and written off, and people wouldn't get back together. There would never be any money to do that. And what really happened is it took a few minutes for us to get some momentum. And then we saw the greatest 10 or 12 year run of consecutive years of growth in our lifetime. And I think that's what's going to happen here. Same kind of thing. And so you talk about, how is that program going to change? You've heard some of it already. Let's go back to example. Tracy, what you were talking about, I thought was really insightful on a couple levels. You described maybe some new, some challenges around, for instance, the cleanliness and sanitation. So the really insightful piece that you added in there was that the planners, right, the event organizers, actually don't always get involved in that. They look to us. Well, I think in the new model, I think that's going to change. You are going to have business partners talking about your sanitation. Whether you like it or not, that'll be the same, but a lot different. but also look at your own business model and how you want to message and put signage and get in front of people with the fact you have those solutions to make them comfortable as a point of differentiation for you. That needs to be folded into your business model and your approach. You talked a little bit about the food program. You know, you can debate, will we ever see another buffet again? I don't know, buffet, or I mean, you know, forever. That's a long time. But you mentioned, Mark, what will it look like in 6 months and 12 months? In that short period of time, candidly, if you have to make a guess, you should go along the lines of thinking you'd be foolish to expect it's going to be right back to buffets as usual. It won't be. And that's great, because you sit now, even Sarah was talking about the time that she's using with her team to build action plans. That action plan better be about what your food program is going to look like, reinvented today, and get all the smart people on your daily stand-up or whatever it is you do to keep in touch with your team and talk about what your food program is going to look like. I think these types of changes, we can share a couple of others here, but this is right in IACC's wheelhouse. We are very, very good at this. If meetings become more regional and smaller in nature, again, that's right in our wheelhouse, and all the indicators show that that will be the case coming out of the gate. There will be different, you know, stay-at-home policies that the states have in the U.S. and in different countries in Europe. Those will be lifted at different times. So by definition, the meetings will need to be regional, because you won't be able to get everybody into that space. And so you're going to need to look at virtual elements. And we see this with participation in these webinars and what we've talked about today. Hundreds and thousands of people doing these webinars and virtual training and working from home that never happened even a month ago. That will carry into the future. And so I heard somebody, they quoted, the idea was, if you're not, for that virtual component, if you're not folding that into your business model of the future, if you're not, as we speak, creating your VDMP, you're going to be a dinosaur. And so I think there'll be a lot of changes. We've talked about a variety of seating styles and giving people a chance to spread out. I think that might not be a nice to have as we come out of this. That's going to be a need. So we're talking a lot about some of the same things and similar challenges that we had before we went into this. You're just going to need to look at it very differently. I do think the model's going to change for the better, and I think it's going to change pretty significantly.
There's a lot of really good points there, Sean, and I guess the overarching realization is as well, we will unlock people and they will start to meet before COVID-19 is eradicated. So it will still be out there, but in a more controlled format, and it will be on the decline. So yes, people will still go into returning to meetings with a fear that they need to be, you know, very careful, have to carry the same sanitizing principles that they had during the lockdown. And then, as you make that point, they will start to control whether meetings that return become, first of all, regional, then national, and then finally globally, you know, and in that stage, and for smaller, more manageable numbers. Sarah, any thoughts from you, and any joining up between what Sean said there and your thinking around preparing the staff for a different future?
Well, that's really what we have been doing as a smaller team, going through our reopening strategy. And our goal is, before we even open our doors, is to talk to our meeting planners. We even actually created a little survey, 10 questions for them, asking what's going to be important for them when they do start to book meetings. So we can incorporate some of their feelings, thoughts into our future plan, because we're kind of creating it as we go, and we need their input. So that's something that we just started, and we're hoping to get that out next week. But I also don't want to forget our employees who are home, not working. Right. And I'm making a point of calling them, which I think is shocking them a little bit, but it's been tremendous, because they see how much I care, how much my team cares about them, and it's just asking how you're doing. So just as much as we're planning our reopening strategy for the future, whenever that may be, we still have to make sure that we're taking care of our other team that is the one who is, you know, our business, the foundation of it.
that's a common thread that I'm hearing. Ben made the point at the beginning, having meetings for business development and, you know, business specific, and then just having some meetings with no other purpose but to connect at a human level and be there and support each other. And you're doing exactly the same. One area, Benjamin, if I may, do carry on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that this works really well with team members. It works also extremely well with clients. Having your sales staff call your customers with whom they feel close for no other purpose than checking in on them goes a very long way into rebuilding the relationships for the future and making them aware that we're going to need their support as soon as we can reopen.
And maybe even bringing the two together. So, you know, one idea that came out of one of the other webinars we ran, you know, would be to have, you know, the sales team setting up small webinars, and it's a gin and tonic making class, or you know, some sort of culinary demonstration, because our executive chef all of a sudden has got some time in their own kitchen to do something. You know, just for the benefit, how to make a loaf of bread when you haven't got any yeast, you know, something that, you know, is very real today. I've learned how to make yeast, so I've learned something new, but you're right, that maybe rather than operations doing one thing and sales doing the other, we've got that chance for them to come together as a family and support each other with that customer outreach. I think you're absolutely right. It's critical. And Ben, if I'd like to keep with you on this subject, because Sean's told us a little bit about, you know, what he's seeing the differences are going to be when we reopen the doors. I know you have raised with me this whole question of how we might buy meeting space again, might buy meeting space in the future, may move from this very comfortable per person model that we priced on throughout the IACC properties for a number of years successfully, but now the space that people require for meetings, you know, square footage per person might be changing, and therefore you're starting to have thoughts around the whole pricing mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. So as social distancing, you know, will kick in as the deconfinement process starts happening, we will have to have essentially the number of people you can put in one room. And if you keep on charging the same way we did, you might find yourself struggling to meet your objectives in terms of sales for your how do you say point mort, break-even point. There we go. So we've been exploring, and I have no clear-cut answer for this, but whether we should explore some new ways or some older ways, you know, saying, okay, the room is that much for this kind of square footage, and then us that only sell packaged offers, maybe you say, okay, if, you know, the food becomes an issue, then maybe do we now offer meetings without food that we didn't do before, but to really explore all sorts of ways. Also in the staffing area, if you decide you're going to quit buffets, you have to be aware that if you decide to go plated or any other way, it's probably going to cost you more staff. And so if you half your revenue and you increase your costs, you're going to have to find some middle ground there. And I think the key to all of that happening is really talking to your customers beforehand. You have to build all of those policies with sanitary precautions, with salespeople, to be able to build the commercial talk around this, to justify and say, we do this for you, and try to see if we can push some of these costs onto our customers to make sure that it's safe for them.
No, that's interesting, especially for those of you who know that Chateau Form's principle in the past was very firmly all-inclusive. You know, I refer to you as the sandals, the equivalent of sandals resorts, but in the meetings industry, everything is bundled. So for you to be thinking that way is pretty radical, and therefore for all of us, radical thinking is really important. So thank you for sharing that, and it'd be interesting to see how that develops in the coming weeks. Kate,
Mark,
if I can, I know we're. Oh,
sorry, Mark, can I just offer an idea right off the back of what Benjamin just said?
please
I
do,
think,
Sean.
thank you. I think that makes great sense. And you can see, I think maybe if you're kind of starting to visualize how some of this might come together, take for example, what Benjamin just said about the model at Chateau Forme and how food focused it was as a catalyst for learning and bringing people together. And if that part of the program changes, is there a shift toward a hybrid element of the meetings that brings more value? And what are the ripple effects? What's the effect then on your staff? What's the effect on, as Benjamin was saying, the pricing model, where the value might be is just in something that looks a lot different than what we were doing yesterday. And no better idea than to get face to face with your customers to hear what that's going to be while you have time to start to build that. I think that was a great point.
And that time now is critical. That's what we're hearing. Everybody we talk to, people like yourselves, are saying, grab this opportunity, now to plan, to develop, to consider the changes, because you won't have that when the doors open again. You'll be fighting the operational side of your business and seeing a change in behaviors from your customers, and they, as we know, they're very difficult to manage side by side. We are coming up, we've 45 minutes now, so I'm going to ask Kate, could you share with us any questions that's come from our attendees today, and we'll address as many as we can.
Yes, thanks, Mark. So yeah, just going back to some early points I think that Sean was making around social distancing policies that we're all sort of under. How can we still offer our support with these guidelines in place?
Sean, would you?
Yeah, could you just say, you fell off just a little bit. I heard the first part and you said, how can we still?
So in looking at social distancing, Sean, with the guidelines that we're all facing at home and sort of at work, how as sort of organisations can we still support?
I think that question, Sean, might be how does that translate into our preparing to reopen the doors for our businesses? Are you anticipating to any degree when venues first open that there'll be still measures for social distancing in place then, or not?
Yeah, to some degree. I'll be honest, that's a great question. I don't know that we have seen a lot of modeling for that, aside from what we talked about earlier about the space, allowing more space, right, for the same size group of people. Perhaps you're going to have to build that in, but I don't know that we've seen a lot of in our industry. Haven't seen a lot of what you see in public spaces now, where grocery stores have spaces marked off physically and lines drawn and such, where you have to maintain a certain distance, and that's enforced by staff. I don't know if anybody's given that any consideration.
Can I
Good
just
question, but
yeah, jump in there? I spoke to some friends in China, even offices, right? Because office spaces will be having that problem before meeting spaces. So we have to keep an eye out for what, corporations are doing in terms of returning to the office. Some of the practices I've heard is similar to what we were doing before the confinement in Europe. In China, companies, a lot of them do team A and team B, and then when team A is at the office, team B is at home office, and every week they switch. And I think we'll have to from ideas from them.
Apologies, Ben. I think we caught the could you just finish the end of your point there?
I was just saying, so we're going to have to find inspiration in how companies return to their offices. They will return to their offices before probably they'll start meeting again.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to pick out another couple as well, because I think we can certainly pick up some of these. Is IACC planning a jobs board for the thousands of staff being laid off, arguably millions of staff being laid off? The connecting of talent and the needs of our members is one that has been important for us in the past, and that's why the jobs board, the global staff exchange, the internship areas that are all on our website have been really important. And in fact, I ran a class last night with NYU students, all remote around the world, as obviously the city is in lockdown. They're looking at that, coming into the industry. And the point I made to them, which I hope is accurate and you all agree with, is that when we come out of this, we will rebuild our teams. Many of our teams will come back, of course, but there will be some changes. Sean made some points of how we're going to, be operating slightly differently. We may need more resource and skills in the area of remote attendees and hybrid meetings, and the technology side might need to be more robust to address a change in behavior in terms of that, the demand of that. So there will be opportunities for staff to come back, and using this opportunity now for individuals to learn and to get a good idea of the trends and the directions we're going in is critical. And yes, of course, as we return and start to employ in these areas, we hope that the IACC job board and other platforms that we've got for doing that will be used. First of all, join IACC's groups on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and network and talk and make yourself visible is critical. Another point, some venues are owned and run by non-profits, maybe universities, and such opening for free is more challenging. Are there any creative ways to partner or get sponsorship towards opening for free? I don't know if anyone's got a view on that. I'll come and open it up. I guess though, what I'm hearing a lot of, if the rules of yesterday are stopping you doing the things you need to do in the coming weeks and months, you have to challenge them. Leadership have to challenge them. This is an environment which yesterday's rules just do not apply. So if you feel it's the right thing to be doing to support communities, supporting your customers in the future, your leadership, if it's not you, has to be having those conversations to be able to change those rules for you to be able to do the right thing. But, given that very sweeping statement, does any of our panel have any specific ideas or thoughts around that?
Part of the question, Mark, was around university centers, and we are seeing a lot of the university centers, because of the variety of resources that they have in one footprint on that campus. We're seeing several university centers be engaged in opportunities with FEMA or with National Guard or with hospital and healthcare environments. If you think about all the there's food facilities on site, there's outdoor space to spread out, there's perhaps dorms and beds on site. They're being reutilized, and that's working straight with government facilities, which do have some money to help support. They understand whether it's cost reimbursement or some sort of margin on top of that. We see that has just started, and there are quite a few. They're starting with the larger universities, but the research that we're seeing is that's going to be an area of focus, an opportunity for those organizations looking to deploy.
Right, and use the examples that are being shared out there of others and other universities or non-profits that are doing stuff to help leverage and change mindset. That's great. I'm going to go to closing comments. We've gone through a lot of detail. If there's any closing comments or any burning points that our panel have got, but just before I do, one last question for Benjamin, if I may. This is a nice meaty one for you. What percentage of staff do you think you will need in the first quarter after you reopen your doors? That's a great one for you on a Friday.
That's a really good one. As a hypothesis, also, we've decided to keep all of our venues open, and of course, try to shift some of our customers concentrate them into some venues. But we've decided to keep all of our venues open, and so we're probably gonna use partial unemployment benefit so that we can crank in the dial gradually, but to reopen. So I don't have an exact number, since our legal framework allows us to turn the dial slowly. We'll do that, and we'll open, of course, as short-staffed as we can.
And maybe parts of the property before you open the full property.
Yeah.
When the property is, yeah, multiple building. Yeah, okay. Great, thank you. Addressed beautifully. Sarah, any closing comments or thoughts or inspiration from you?
I guess the only thing I'll add is that for me, reaching out to the mentors that I've had over the years has been very important during this time. Creston Woods, who is on our board, I've known him for 25 years, and he's one of the first people I reached out to and said, you know, this is how I'm feeling. And we worked at 911, 9/11, we were together that day. And we brought that back up and talked about how we felt. And it was a similar feeling. It's different, but it's similar.
Yeah.
And I think if you have someone out there that you need to talk to, like you should, because I felt so much better after that call and talked about the future. And there is a future. And even the IACC calls, the webinars that we've been on, it feels good. So take advantage of the opportunity that are there, and we will come back.
And look after yourself. Yeah, that's a great point. Sean.
Yes, sir. Well, so I think, you know, for me, just maybe the takeaway is that, you know, good, strong leadership is most important in times like this, when there's most uncertainty. And so I think just by joining this group today, other IACC opportunities to join webinars and things, you know, make the decision to lead. It's been a pretty horrific few weeks for everybody, and for your staff and your people, and like Sarah was saying, looking for resources to help and just to share some conversation. Make the decision to get in that space and to be that person. Help lead this business forward, because that is what's going to happen. We just need to figure out what that's going to be and help shape kind of that program as we come out of this. But the position you want to be in is to help lead your people and lead your team and stay close to your customers and help lead them forward as well.
Great, thank you, sir. Tracy.
I agree with both Sarah and Sean and Benjamin. I mean, I think looking forward and staying connected, and Sarah, I like the idea of your mentors, but also the people, maybe the interns that you used to have, you know, or young people coming in. My niece is about to graduate from high school and is unsure if she's going to college in the fall because of all of that. So those new people coming into your environment who are young and have never experienced this, how can you support them emotionally, because they also have probably things going on at home. But I think, and you can get overwhelmed with lots of Zoom calls a day, but just sending a nice note or picking up the phone and calling them, because we do live in the society of technology. A phone call is actually a really good thing to do at this time. So, but I'm very optimistic about the future of our industry. I think it's going to be a new normal, and we have great opportunity to be inventive and help our customers go forward.
And embrace that change. Thank you. Wise words. Ben, sir, last but not least.
I wanted to share with you, you know, when you get bad news, there are 4 stages you go through when anybody gets a piece of bad news. The first stage is denial. No, this can't be happening. COVID, oh my God, look at the Chinese or the Italians or the Europeans. Yes, it's happening. Second stage is, it might be happening, but I'm smarter. I'm gonna find a way to figure this out and use it to my advantage. Third stage is the most painful one. It's not only is this true and happening, but I'm not smarter than everybody else. And there's a fourth stage, which is from that realization, from denial to that realization, and then to action. And the fourth stage is, okay, now that it's happening, now that I'm not smarter than anybody else, how do I turn this to my advantage? How do I focus into action? And I think that realizing that you need to turn yourself towards action, to leave those stages behind and that pain behind was helpful for me in coming to terms with this crisis. It's like, okay, the worst case is here. Now what do I do? And try to focus on the action. So keep going forward and stay alive.
So we enter the fun part next, the rebuilding, the reconnection. Thank you. All wonderful, closing comments by the four of you. Thank you so much for being part of the discussion today. Thank you to the IACC community that have stayed with us and gone over the 45 minutes, but only because it deserved to run on a little bit longer. Just to close today's session, we have got 1 or 2 questions there we will address, so I'll share it with the panel. It will come out with the video. For anyone who thought this was really useful but wants to share it with colleagues, either IACC or outside of IACC, Kate will be following up with the YouTube link to this session. And last but not least, if these are valuable to you, we have another one next Tuesday, which is how to create a positive mindset, delivered by Cindy Novotny. We then have our third in the series of this IACC Shorts, which is talking about people. And how we manage our people specifically. Then we will go on to technology the week afterwards. But do keep dialing in, ladies and gentlemen. Keep high spirits, keep motivated, and let's engineer our way out of COVID-19 to be even stronger as we represent, we know, the top 1% of meeting venues worldwide. So have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much for your time again. Thank you so much to our panel today, and we look forward to joining you next week.